a scene that I really enjoy painting. So we'll see how we get on. So I'm working on another commission today here in the studio, and it all seems to be working out quite well. So I've got to crack on. Now in this scene I've got a figure and I've got 4 dogs, 2 beige Labradors, 1 black Labrador, and a little terrier that stands there. So we're going to have to try and work around that and see if we can get them in. First thing I'm going to do, we've got it's a snow scene basically, so we've got to watch that we preserve white paper in appropriate areas. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to start off with an area in the center there that's damp. There we go. This is my thoughts on this one, and I'm going to pick around the figure. There is some warmth. I like a bit of warmth in a snow scene, I always do, as you probably are aware, those of you that have seen me paint snow scenes before. And right, we're coming right the way down into the distance. Then the most distant area will be this area here, right? So this is going to be cobalt blue with a touch of light red. Not too much. More cobalt blue than anything. And that is going to go in there. There we go. And that'll go right the way down and around like that. Just control that the way that's running. And of course, everything you leave will be white snow. So we've got overhanging branches there and a lovely bit of white sort of snowy touch there. And then right in the depth it's going to be really blue. Just there. There we are. Now, a little bit more water. This is where we've got to work fairly quickly to try and get a feeling of overhanging branches and snow in amongst everything else. Here we are. And this is where we need to make certain that we're dark enough, because if we're not dark enough, we're not going to get the impression of snow. So I'm going to use a bit more light red here within the blue, and that will show up the overhanging branches and areas that I want to preserve white paper. There we go. There we are. And I'm picking in and around, trying to preserve white paper where appropriate. That's it. Right, now I'm going to use burnt sienna in that mix to create a darker sort of feeling here in the sort of very distant area, and little touches here that could be sort of overhanging sort of winter trees that have got a little bit of snow on them. So that's the idea of all this now. That's it. A little bit darker there. It's going to be more tonal than anything, which just going to lift off a bit of colour with another brush, because it is running down quite considerably there. Just lift off a bit of that colour there and there. There we go. Okay, and right in the depth, go really dark there and there. Well, that's not really dark, but it's dark-ish, because that will pick up the shape of the figure then. Like that. There you go. And now we're going to work our way up and out, because these branches overhang. So for a start off, I'm picking, leaving the white paper at this stage, and just creating the illusion of overhanging branches entering that area. Yeah. Nice, this all seems to be flowing quite nicely at this stage. Still very early days, but so far, as they say, so good. There we go. And that is the overhanging branches from trees in the foreground. Then eventually we come up into the sky area. That, very little sky really. In actual fact, don't think I'm going to have sky. Let's totally forget the sky area. Let's just continue with these overhanging areas. Right there, I'm going to put in another, just enhance that blue a touch there, and a touch there as well. There we are. And then I'm going to enhance some of this dark area too with blue. And then as we head up, we can then create that branch, that tree that's overhanging there. And this one that's overhanging here. And we're just filling it in a little bit more here. Could be sky. Quite possibly is sky. Get that lovely winter sky. You know, it gets nice and dark. Lovely winter skies. Always do work well when you get white snow, dark skies. A little bit thicker that side for another piece of sky as the branches overhang, and same there with a dense area there that runs out of picture. And then we can just see what I would presume is the sky in between these overhanging branches above. And that, I think, let's go one tone darker than that. I always push the boundaries, you know me, to try and give that ultimate impression of dark areas in that snow. There you go. And then we've got some little touches there that I think help with that feeling of overhanging branches. Another little touch there I'm dropping in just to try and get a feeling of branches coming in. They're just beginning to go dry, but it's not too clearly defined. I want that misty, hazy feel in the distance there. We can put any real darks in later. So there we are. There's the first start of this lovely snow scene on Galleywood Common. Now I want to show a bit of warmth too around certain areas, particularly this little area here. It's just beginning to dry, but that's okay. There. And now there is a black Labrador there, so I've just got to watch that we don't impede on its shape. And what I'm going to do, I'm scratch up with the finger. That creates snow, you see, onto that area. Now I'm adding raw sienna with cobalt blue now, because I want sort of like a rather dull green, because that will appear around this sort of area. And I'm using the point of the brush, the finger, different techniques just to show, and scratching across the paper and pushing up to help give this a little bit of feeling of sort of snow onto undergrowth. There you go. Lovely technique that. Like using the finger. Always useful. And then we're going to have another little area there. Use a finger to draw up again. As we come forward, I'm adding more blue and more yellow to create sort of like a very much an evergreen sort of feel, which I feel that we could have somewhere here. I'm just using memory really to create this, because I've not got anything to go by. No particular photograph or anything, so and I'm going to paint back in here to leave white paper where there is another area of sort of like undergrowth that's standing up. There we go, see this undergrowth standing up there, and then it's overhanging like that into that area. So that's all sort of suggestive, but it's the shadow that will pull it all together. So that's a little closer. We need possibly a little bit of that here, just standing up. There we go. Good, that's coming along. Now, as always in snow scenes, you do need the warmth, and I'm putting some warm touches into this foreground. It's going to have a nice warm area here, albeit where the where you can't see the snow, you know, it's and now I'm going to really cut back and create a bold warmth to this lower part there, you know, and then we just dit and dot around. Dit and dot, that's technical, that's a term, isn't it? Dit and dot. Dit and dot around a little area that hasn't got any snow on it. Right, now let's attend to the figure and the dogs. Now apparently the figure has blonde hair, so that to me is sort of like a yellowy white sort of raw sienna, really, I suppose. Like that. Lift that away. There we go. The jacket is black. Now black always an interesting colour to mix. In actual fact, I prefer to mix rather than just use a black. So I'm using burnt umber and ultramarine for what I would call a black, but I don't like to say black because it's more grey than anything. And I'm not sure there's a hood on this, but on this figure, but now it's either got to be darker or lighter than the background. Now I elect to be darker, so there's more colour, less water, but we will have some areas where the light is hitting. So we've got sort of like the collar area, not down that right hand side, and the arm like that, but down this side where the light is coming. There we go. And I like the shape of that. I honestly feel that that's probably the right shape that I've produced the drawing. Like that. And then it comes down. Quite a long coat, one would imagine, for this winter scene. And I would say the coat would probably come down more or less like that, really, to somewhere around that sort of area. There you go. Yep, nice and solid. While it's still slightly damp, we're looking at grey jeans apparently. So grey is just a lighter colour of black. So just add a bit more brown to that, because make it a warm grey. There we go. So that's the legs. Up to the tops of the boots. Now the boots are green wellies apparently, so that needs to be attended to, but let's just leave that for a moment, let that dry. And what I want to do is just take off a little bit of colour on that right hand side down there, because that's where the light is coming. There we are, see that? So it gives a bit of rounded shade to the whole thing. to the figure. Right. Now, just improve on that collar business up there. There you go. That's better. Now the dog. Now that is black. So we've got a black Labrador. Right, okay. That means plenty of colour, very little water. Same colours, burnt umber and ultramarine blue. Right, we're going to have this as the black Labrador. And we've got the nose there. And we have, there is an ear there, but we'll bring the neck down. Always not an easy thing to depict, particularly when the dogs are fairly close. But I think I can probably get away with this. And I think that's what you do when you paint, you get away with it. Particularly if you're not used to painting particular subjects, and black Labradors are not normally my subject, so it's a challenge, but of course a challenge that I always like, because unless you take on a challenge, you don't know whether you're going to be able to be successful. And dog leg like that, and of course the other one coming down the back like that. There we are. And then we've had the one at the front like that, and standing forward, and then just touch of the other one just blending in there like that. There we go. Just got to pull that right down. And then of course the tail, that sort of go, they tend to go up like that, and they're a bit jagged. Go. Now we have two beige Labradors, which, just trying to alter this, there we go, which we have one here that is more or less walking away like that, and see the rear there, and frontage there, leg there, and leg there. Yeah, and then we have another one more in the distance there. A bit further away, hopefully that looks farther away. And a white, so that little chappy there, the terrier, is white, so we're going to have to deal with him later on. Now I'm going to put in the sort of, how can I put it, more light areas really. Sorry, just getting that fixed, that's it. I'm going to put in, sorry, the branches and the trunk work. Well, we've got a lovely sort of a warm feeling there, but it's got to be dark warm. It's got to be dark, because everything in the winter, when there's snow, looks quite dark compared to when you've not got snow there. Now I'm just taking away some branches at this stage, and we're just going to take another branch off there. I've got more to do to that, but of course you've got to remember there's snow. So this is what we've got to obviously be very, very aware of. So there we go. So you start off like that with the bulk of the real sort of thick branch, but very quickly you lose it into a smaller branch. There we go. The smaller branch I'll put in shortly, and then we have a branch coming down there. Then I need a rigger now, I think, or I will do very shortly. Right, here we go. Now let's we've got to remember that we have snow. So if we don't leave gaps, then you never get it to look like snow. Just see that branch. You probably see another branch just coming in there and there, and then a touch here really. And just some touches here, just where these branches are overhanging. We're even going to bring some down from the top, which I think is a good idea. There we go. Branch coming down there. Don't want to do too much to this, because if you do, you overcook it, as they call it, and we don't want to do that. But we want to do enough to indicate that there are branches, and then of course you can have the odd branch that comes out that's not got any leafing on, because that quite often happens in wooded areas. Quite often you get branches that stick out that haven't really got any real other branches on them. So you can see, there we are. Good, I think that's okay. That's fine, I think. Let's just pull one or two down, because it does have that sort of impression. Yeah. And then we then show a few more here and there in this particular area. Make that just a little bit bigger. There you go. Don't want to have too many, but you don't want, you've got to have enough. Now my shadow colour will be like a purple, and that is ultramarine blue and alizarin crimson. Now, where do we put this purple? Well, we've got to be a bit careful here, purely because we've got to watch what is shadowed and what isn't. Now, I think that we're going to get this purpley shadow running down there. I need a little more blue in that. Let's just, I want a purpley blue, but doesn't want to be too. There we go. That's better. And that then runs like that. You'll have some purpley blue touches on the edge there. And then I shall use a flat brush, lightly damped, to create a softness to some of these shadows. See the way I'm softening the tops? There we are. And same will go here. Bit of shadow under there, like that, and a bit of softening. Pulling that shadow up into the, what is in effect the snow area. And then we're going to have the same here. And I'm going to leave some little pieces standing up there, because it gives the impression of some form of sort of something standing up in the background and beyond. There we go, look at that. Still a little damp, but that's not going to cause me any major concerns at the moment. And then of course we come to these areas here that that have shadow, and that sort of shadows across there, because that will cast a shadow. You see, that tree is going to cast a shadow down the area there, and that in turn will show the tops of the undergrowth there, and of course the undersides as well. Little area there like that, nice and dark. That's nice, that's lovely. And the underside there, and then of course that shadow then runs across like that, and in to where the figures are, and the dogs of course. There we are. Soften those. In places. It's all about softening really with snow shadows. Now that will in turn run across the snow, so that dog and that little dog there, the little terrier, will be in shadow, and so will the figure as such, but that figure is already dark enough, I think. But of course we need a solid shadow beyond that, like that. Always a good thing to do. And then shadows under those dogs. That will need softening. And now just got to watch it don't overplay that. There we are. That's all right, yeah. I'm just softening under that shadow there, because I need a soft feel where those two Labradors are in shadow. And that's just got to extend to the little terrier there. Okay. And then, of course, those shadows will in turn create the illusion of those areas standing up that are in shadow. But of course, as it comes down to the foreground, those that are standing up are in sunlight. There we are, soften up. Lovely. Couldn't be much simpler than that, I don't think. Yeah. And then we have a nice sweep of shadow, a bit of raw sienna to that, just to take off the harshness now as we pull up some foreground shadow there to give this foreground strength, and the dappled shadow, it's not really dappled, but it's this one's dragging across. There you go. There we are. And now this will now be used to create shadow on some, not all, but some of these overhanging branches. And you can actually show now where these branches actually hang. And we just dabble and dot and create that shadow effect. There, and this side as well. There's a bit of light on that. Lovely. Feel the light on the snow, which is always very much appreciated in a snow scene, I think. And I'm going to allow that to dry. Now I want to add in just some really warm shadow to go amongst all that blue. I'm not sure whether I need it here. No, I don't think I do. But I certainly need it in places along this edge there, where there's likely to be sort of, I don't know, a bit of unevenness within that track. Footprints, that's something to consider. Where has the figure come from? That's what we've got to be thinking about. There we go, footprints. From the figure and of course the dogs, as they run around in varying places. So that's always a sign that, you know, you're observing. What should be going on, really, I suppose. These little touches that are going in here, there's this warm tone that are all suggestive of shadow, and without actually the need to put too much in. And it's where you put them is the deciding factor, of course. You know, may be that you don't need them, but I always try and push the boundaries a little bit by putting some extra bits and pieces, particularly to try and warm up the scene. Like that, there you go. Pull that foreground forward. I think that's certainly done that. That will sink back a touch anyway. I don't think we're far from what we're looking for. Let me just analyse that. Well, as you can see, I've taken the surround away, so I've got a nice white edge, and just going to sign it up. Now we'll assign it in the bottom right hand corner here, in my normal signature as I do it now, and that's just a pure steed. And there you have it, walking the dogs on Galleywood Common.